I'm Dave, founder of Halloween Year Round, and today I'm talking about episode 3 of Shudder's The Creep Tapes, titled Jeremy, the semi-sequel to Heretic that just was sort of timed perfectly. I didn't know I wanted. We are back with Peach Fuzz. Again, I feel weird calling him that. And he's a priest, which I know is one of like the main images circulating from this show, the image of him with the priest collar. So it's an episode that I've been really anticipating because there's kind of an interesting overlap with like serial killers and god complexes. The whole like, I decide who lives and dies. And I think that's really interesting. And as much as I love this episode, I feel like it didn't go far enough. First and foremost, though, here's your spoiler warning. It's like 24 minutes. Go watch it, then come back here. You better come back. Let's get into it. We have this guy, Jeremy. He hosts this show called Gotcha, where he's like, YouTube Michael Moore. Where
this is exactly what Michael Moore does. Famous documenter. And he goes up to people with a camera, and he's like, why did you do this? Why did you pollute? You are bad. You're a bad person. It's very dramatic.
So right off the bat, I love that there's almost this like adversarial relationship between Peach Fuzz and Jeremy from the start, because Jeremy's going in with false pretenses himself, not realizing that he's dealing with a serial killer who, of course, knows everything about him already, and it's all part of his game. So I like the dynamic between them, and the sort of, it's like a game of shifting, who's in power, who's not in power, who thinks they have the upper hand. Jeremy certainly thinks he does going in. It kind of gives him this arrogance, which makes the ending all the more kind of tragic, but also kind of satisfying, because I feel like out of all the victims we've seen, he's the most annoying, and here's why. Number one, when he does his reveal, it's really like over the top and cheesy, and I have trouble believing that this guy Jeremy is a real person. Peach Fuzz, on the other hand, I love that the idea that like he would be fascinated with like religious mythology, for lack of a better term, and I say that as someone who was raised Catholic. A lot of horror fans were. I find it interesting that like he's so fascinated by that whole mythos, because of course he would be. From the parable about that was when I carried you, to the way he calls that back as a sick joke, at the end of the episode after he kills him. And it just highlights why I wish this series had longer episodes, because I feel like there was so much more meat in there, and it just barely scratched the surface of Peach Fuzz going full, philosopher, which he's done before, but in a new and interesting way we haven't seen before, with that whole serial killer god complex. And I feel like this episode could have been an entire movie. And it bummed me out. I'm like, oh, he's already running from him? Oh, we're already at this point? Because don't get me wrong, I would watch 1 million of these episodes, and the way that the series is set up, there's kind of no end to it, because, he could make as many tapes as he wants, and each one could be different, and like there's such a variety there, and an opportunity for a great anthology series. I just wish the episodes were like 40, 45 minutes, that we could get a little more into the characters, a little more into the individual stories. Because I feel like the second we got into it, it just ended. That aside, there was a lot I did like about this episode. I love kind of seeing the older video of Peach Fuzz. So we're to assume we can't really trust anything he says, even though he does do callbacks to the original, like when he talks about Tubby Time, which leads us to believe that maybe those were actual things from his childhood, kind of like in The Dark Knight, where the Joker always has a different story for how he got those scars. One common thread is that he hates his father, because he mentions him multiple times. So I like how this episode gets into that and gives us kind of a peek into Peach Fuzz's maybe backstory, because in that video he shows Jeremy where, you know, he's wearing the cross necklace, he's in the wolf mask. He does look younger. I know we only see his body, but he looks younger, and maybe we're to assume that's how he got started into it, which makes this episode the first time we're actually maybe getting a peek into our favorite serial killer's true identity or backstory, and I hope that thread continues. I know there's only 2 episodes left, but there's plenty of room with more seasons. This started as a review, and it's sort of turning into me rambling, which is what these usually do. But hey, these are just my thoughts. You know, I'd love to hear what you thought. Let me know in the comments. Did you like this episode? Do you like Peach Fuzz as a priest? Do you wish it had been longer? Do you wish he had done more? Do you wish they had gone full exorcism? Because it would have been interesting and unique and different. Like, share, subscribe, all the YouTube stuff. If you don't, you may end up being invited to a not real priest's house where he reuses the same axe he did from episode 1. I hope he cleaned it. You really have to be careful with those bloodborne pathogens. And as always, every day is Halloween.